spent the last few kind of weeks or days talking about equations, and we know that an equation are just two equivalent expressions that have an equal sign in the middle. But today we're going to start talking about inequalities. And inequalities are very similar to equations, where we're still going to be trying to solve for that variable. But unlike an equation, an inequality does not use an equal sign. Inequalities are our less than or greater than signs. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. But before we get to all of this, if you are an adrenaline junkie like me, then you love amusement parks. You love roller coasters. You love all sorts of those things that kind of have adrenaline and make you kind of fear for your life sometimes a little bit. But I'll never forget, my family used to go to Disney World when we were little. Or when I was little. And one of the best days was when I was finally tall enough to ride the ride I had always wanted to go on, which was the rock and roll roller coaster. And the day that I was able to walk up to one of those height signs and I was tall enough to ride was fantastic. It was such a great day. But you've seen it before where a kid really wants to go on a roller coaster and they're just not tall enough to go on there. Like this kid, for example. His sign says you must be 42 inches tall to ride this ride. And here is that 42 inches mark. So right now, when we're looking at this kid, how is he feeling? Is he happy? Is he sad? Is he mad? Is he excited? Well, we have to pay attention to what the sign says. And all it says is you must be 42 inches tall to ride this ride. And is he 42 inches tall? Yeah, he's taller than 42 inches. He is allowed to ride this ride. But what if they started changing the wording of this sign? For example, what if it said you must be at least 42 inches tall to ride this ride? Now, how is this kid feeling? Is he happy? Is he sad, mad, excited? So we have to think about what those words at least mean. So for this kid, if I said he has to be at least 42 inches tall to ride this ride, that means he has to be at this line or taller. He has to be at least 42 inches. So this kid, he's happy. He's excited. He's going to get to go on this roller coaster. But if we change the words again and it says, well, this time you must not exceed 42 inches tall to ride this ride. Now, how is this kid feeling? So if you must not exceed, that means you cannot be taller than this line to ride this ride. So this kid does exceed 42 inches tall. So he is mad. He is sad. He is not getting to ride this ride. If we change it again and it says you must be taller than 42 inches tall to ride this ride. Now this kid is feeling happy. He's excited because here is that 42 inches tall and he is taller. He is greater than 42 inches. And if we change it one more time to make it say you must be shorter than 42 inches tall to ride this ride. Now our kid is sad. He's mad because he's taller than. He's not shorter than that. All right, so now let's take all those words that we just talked about with our kid at the roller coaster and let's talk about what these mean when it comes to inequalities. So our first sign that we had, when the sign says you must be at least 42 inches tall to ride. Our keywords that helped us there were the keywords at least. Remember our kid who was at least 42 inches, he was excited, he was happy because he was greater than those 42 inches tall to ride those rides. So in this case, our words at least mean the inequality greater than or equal to, because if he was 42 inches tall, he would have been okay to ride that ride. If he was 48 inches tall, he also would have been okay to ride that ride. So this is our sign, greater than or equal to. So when we graph this, it's going to get a nice closed dot. I'm just going to shade mine in really quickly. Okay, and the reason it gets that nice shaded closed dot is because if you remember when we talked about our equal signs, our equations, every time there was an equal sign, it got a nice shaded closed dot. So since our sign has part of an equal sign here, it could be greater than or equal to, it's going to get that closed dot. So as long as you are a number that is 42 or greater, you're going to be okay. So we're going to put that nice closed dot on 42. But we have to do something else with our inequalities because 42 is not the only possible answer here. Again, you could be 42 and a half. You could be 42 and 100ths. You could be 58. You just have to be 42 or greater. So our inequalities, when we graph them, they also get an arrow. So I'm going to draw a straight line up from my dot. Now, the inequality will always tell you which way to point your arrow. So it looks like my inequality is pointing to the right side. So that means my arrow is going to go to the right side. And sure enough, that arrow is covering all the numbers that are 42 and greater. So some other words to look for that could also mean greater than or equal could be the words no fewer than. They could be the words no less than. They could be the words minimum. And they could also be the words at least. So just some other words to look for. All right, moving on to our next one. Now let's talk about less than or equal to. So our situation that represented this was where it says you must not exceed 42 inches tall to ride that ride. So remember, our kid was really upset here because he was greater than 42 inches tall. So not exceed means less than or equal to, and this is what our inequality looks like. It also is going to get that nice shaded in dot because, again, it has part of that equal to sign. Since x has to be less than or equal to 42, I put a closed dot on 42. But again, that includes 42 and anything smaller than that. So my inequality is pointing to the left, so that is the way my arrow is going to point as well. Some other words that could mean less than or equal to could be the words at most, up to, maximum, no more than, and must not exceed. All right. Moving on to our greater than. This is where we had the kid where the sign said you must be taller than 42 inches tall to ride that ride. So if he was exactly 42 inches tall, wasn't going to work for him. But as long as he was greater than 42, anything bigger than that, then he was okay. So since the number 42 is not included, it does not get a closed dot. Instead, it gets a nice open dot. Okay, so we're going to put a nice open dot on the number 42. And again, that arrow is going to tell me which way to point. So I need to include all the numbers that are greater than 42. Some words that can mean greater than are the words exceed, more than, above, larger than, and taller than. And last but not least, moving on to less than, if I can pick up my paper. Less than, this was our sign where it said you must be shorter than 42 inches tall to ride this ride. So our keywords here were shorter than. So as long as that kid was not 42 inches tall, he was going to be okay. So again, that does not include the number 42. So because there's no equal sign on this, we're going to get a nice open dot. It's going to be an open dot on 42, but my arrow is going to point to all the numbers that are less than 42. So these could be words like fewer than, smaller than, below, and shorter than. So remember, if there's no equal sign as part of our inequality, it gets a nice open dot. But if there is part of it that could be equal to, we get a closed dot.